Hi, let's look at a few examples of how teachers work a blended learning arc into an actual week of instruction. I want to start by looking at a whole day model because the flex model of blended learning originated primarily in whole day models where the teachers had the luxury of extending the blended learning arc over an entire school day. And then we'll talk about how you can squeeze a blended learning arc into a block schedule or even into a traditional bell schedule. So here's an example of a whole day model, which is if you look at a Summit Public School or an Acton Academy or some of these whole day flex models, you might see something like this, where that bright pink represents the group discussion. So the students would launch into the day with a morning group discussion for, say, 15 minutes. And then the teacher would start doing one-on-one check-ins while the students are doing their first independent work sprint. They would then take a break just to stretch and then maybe even go outside. They have 15 minutes only because it's hard to do really long independent work sprints. So in this schedule example, they have 45 minutes planned for the first independent work sprint. And then they take a break, go outside, come back inside, do another 45-minute work sprint, and then a repeat and do another, and then it's lunchtime. And then to rekindle the energy for the next extended work sprint, the group comes back together for a group discussion. And that launches them into a collaborative project or game. And then they end the day with the collaborative project or game and then a final group discussion after cleanup. And that's when they reflect and think back about how the day went. And so their day really, if you were to summarize it, they have group discussion in the morning, then they do their independent work, have lunch, then they do their collaborative work, and then they close out the day with a group discussion. And meanwhile, the teacher has the opportunity to do one-on-one check-ins during that time. Many of these schools, when they moved to a remote environment, they pretty much mirrored that same schedule, but did it using video conferencing technology. Okay, now let's look at what this might look like for a block schedule. This example schedule is for a first and second grade combination class of English language arts. So these are really young children. Some of you are teaching high school. So you'd want to adjust this based on your student's age, their stamina for extended work sprints, and the needs of your classroom. But in this example, the teacher starts off the day or the English language arts block every time with a group discussion. And then the teacher immediately starts doing one-on-one check-ins, the green boxes on this chart, while the students are doing on Mondays independent work, on Tuesdays collaborative projects and games, on Wednesdays collaborative projects and games, and then on Fridays independent work again. In this block schedule, the students are not meeting for ELA on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They would take a stretch or physical break in between and then do another work sprint and then close out that instructional block every day with a group discussion for reflection, for character call outs, for intentions for going forward. In their remote environment, this teacher shifted the plan a bit so that there weren't specific times for the physical breaks. It was more up to the households to determine when those were. This teacher also only had the group discussions on Mondays and Fridays because in her community, it was hard for the families to come together for synchronous video conferencing more often than that. Again, it's very particular to your circumstances for how often your learners can get together for Zoom video conferencing or whatever video conferencing you're doing if you're doing a block schedule and you're doing it entirely remotely. The third example I'll show you is a purely traditional model. And in this example, the instructional blocks are only 45 minutes long. In this particular example, it's a second period, third grade math class. Again, adjust this based on your own students and circumstances. But in this example, the teacher does a group discussion every day of the week at the start of this instructional time together, and then goes immediately into one-on-one check-ins every single day and spends his or her time doing one-on-one check-ins while the students are either doing independent work or a collaborative project and game, and then ends every math block with another group discussion for reflection. Again, in a remote environment, this teacher had less of that synchronous group discussion time, but many communities find that doing that synchronous discussion really benefits their learners and launches them into their learning and allows them to close more successfully, to connect your community together. So you might find that you want more, or to preserve the synchronous group discussion every day of the week. If you have a traditional schedule, just base it on the circumstances of your learners, and you'll be able to get the schedule for your blended learning arc that's right for your community.